right places so that we can start to build communities, investments in housing, unprecedented investments in housing and education, in healthcare. A legislative agenda that includes energy and healthcare reform. The energy bill is before Congress tomorrow. Healthcare reform agenda that is entirely necessary and will and must be passed so that we can ensure the stability of the American economy, because it's eating away at people's lives, at business. So much that we're facing. And in this context is this community of Americans that is the fastest growing sector of the American population. About 50 million people, right, Dr. Pastor? About 50 million and growing. The projections are that we're going to outpace population growth among all of the sectors of the American population into the mid part of this century, and that will be one of the largest sectors of the American population. The president walks into a situation that is very, very difficult. And let me just mention the elephant on the table: comprehensive immigration reform. This president, and I say this without equivocation, this president is committed to comprehensive immigration reform, and he wants to get it done. I think this president also understands the importance of the census, and so he is making the largest investment in the capacity of the Department of Commerce and in the relationships with community-based organizations to count the American population and ensure that resource allocation from the national government is fair and just. And you all should know, if you don't know already, that our friend and the leader of this organization has, if he hasn't already been tapped, to be part of the census exercise and a special commission. But this president recognizes that the census is an instrument of justice and political empowerment, and has invested in that exercise. But we are facing a very difficult time. And the question before you today is, how do you govern in a time like this? The Latino community feels and is experiencing the worst of the impacts of this economic crisis. The historic marginalization, the historic underachievement or educational attainment that has happened, the historic less than the best healthcare delivery, the historic higher than the average unemployment continues. Housing foreclosures have hit the Latino community hardest. And in all of this, we as elected officials, you as elected officials, some of us now as appointed officials, are charged with the awesome responsibility of ensuring that this government, in all its manifestations, from the national government to the most local manifestation of government, ensures education for everyone, a quality education, healthcare delivery, reducing the cost of living, improving the quality of life. And it is difficult to do that. I think that the most compelling and urgent thing that we need to do, outside of the important work, legislative and budgetary work that has been done and will be done as we go forward in the 2011 budget and continue to invest. And I'll tell you a little bit about the role of my office in all of this. But outside of the work that we already know we have to do, we open up the doors of our offices, we answer the calls of the constituents, we try to problem solve, we address the issues that are immediately before our community day to day. But the more urgent matter is that we need to plan for the future and invest in the future. And I think that we as Latinos, given the conditions that exist in our community, have tended, rightly or wrongly or passing no judgment, to deal with what is right before us. And we have to step back as public officials and become part of a national conversation about strategic and regional planning, and how do we build stronger cities, and where do we invest in housing, and where do we invest in mass transit, and what's smart technology that should be in our communities, and connectivity between the health institutions, the teaching hospitals and universities, the colleges, the community colleges, the training programs. What is the ask that we make of our local, state, and federal government on behalf of the constituency that we represent? It has to be a smart ask. And I believe that, the president is a community organizer at heart. He knows about being a troublemaker. So when people come and say, knocking on the door of the authorities and the higher-ups and say, we need this for our community and we're not going to go away, it's not offensive to the President of the United States. It is what he expects communities will do as they empower themselves. We ought to take this perfect storm, the first African-American President of the United States of America, coming from a city, being up close and personal with the Latino community and communities of color and diverse communities, his diverse experience. We should take full advantage as public officials of this moment and begin to orchestrate the ask for our community as we become the largest segment, we are the largest minority, but the fastest growing, and really in numbers, and by extension then in investment in those numbers, the most important element for the future of this republic. If we fail to educate the children, if we fail to deliver health care, if we fail to get off of our over-dependency on foreign fossil fuels and clean up the environment, if we fail to house people properly, if we fail to do all these things, we fail the Latino community and we fail the American promise. And the fact of the matter is that if the Latino community does not succeed, America doesn't succeed. That's the fact. We need to get these kids on track. We need to get our community on track. But we need to plan. And I think the most important exercise is to begin a conversation about the future. Begin to imagine that El Barrio can be a different kind of place. That it doesn't have to be necessarily what it is today. That we can have a walkable community, that we can have open space of quality, that we can have a quality school, that we can have a community health center, that we can have access to mass transit that takes us to work and we don't have to get in our car. All of the things that we need to build strong communities. The creation of my office is this president's recognition that 80% of the people live in urban America and metropolitan America, that 90% of our gross domestic product and creativity and innovation happens there, and that we need to plan how to invest smartly in urban America. And guess what? That's where we are. That's where we live. That's where we work. That's where we arrive when we come from other countries. And so I beseech you today, on behalf of the President, and as the Director of the White House Office of Urban Affairs, to enter the conversation of strategic planning for the future of your community. Wherever you are, whether it's a small city, small town or village, or a big city, or a small village like the Bronx with 1,400,000 people, it's all the same. The needs are the same, the aspirations and the promise and potential is the same. I look forward to continuing our collaboration to build a stronger and more beautiful and more diverse America. Thank you all very, very much, and God bless.